Welcome to the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage ACHknowledge webinar. Today we're going to look at applying for a management plan. You can see on the screen there's a little sort of overview of how the portal would look when someone accesses it through the internet. And this is sort of going through that sign-in stage. I'd like to acknowledge the Whadjuk people whose land I'm on today, and also Aboriginal people around the state. So for an Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Management Plan, obviously the stages of going through due diligence first and recognizing that where you are going to undertake your activity, it's a tier 3 activity, so that moderate to higher level impact, and also that there's going to be harm to Aboriginal cultural heritage. So the process of due diligence happen before this stage, before you'd even get to the portal. The process of due diligence are explained in the management code, which is available online. And to go through that due diligence process, you'd also use the online mapping system, which is available through the department's website. So the process of due diligence would be working out where the activity is going to occur, if you're impacting Aboriginal cultural heritage, so looking at the directory to see if there is already submitted information, recognizing that if there is no information there, that it doesn't mean that there is no Aboriginal cultural heritage, and you're required to do the necessary investigations as prescribed under the due diligence processes. So really, by the time you come to the portal, you're already at a stage of the process where you recognise you've done all that due diligence, you know about the Aboriginal cultural heritage, where the activity is going to occur, you've undertaken your mitigation strategies to amend where possible the activity so it doesn't harm Aboriginal cultural heritage, and you've got to the stage where, okay, you need to go through the applying for and developing a management plan. So this will show the first stage that you'd come to in the portal, which is the notice stage. And you click through to continue to start the management plan notice. So as I said before, the process of working out where your activity is, it is harming Aboriginal cultural heritage. It's a tier 3 activity. The investigations into the area that you're going to be working in or you're going to apply for would have already been undertaken at this stage. So the consultation with the relevant Aboriginal parties would have already taken place. And whether that's through meetings or surveys to determine the nature of the harm, and also to develop the management plan. So the management plan, in terms of what harm is going to occur to that Aboriginal cultural heritage within the proposed area, all those details would have already been defined by the time the notice is going to be submitted. Submitting the notice really triggers that period for the parties to the plan to reach agreement on the plan. So the proponent would enter their details here, which would be pre-populated because they would have signed it into their account, and ask questions about, is this updating an existing management plan? So the details provided at this stage are quite broad. It's the location of where the activities are going to occur and a description of the activities. So any amendments to the area would have been finalised before you would have got to this stage. So by the time you're submitting the notice, you would have a good idea where you want to apply for. So this is demonstrating drawing that polygon on the map. There's other layers under there that you can display, whether it's mining tenements or address or cadastre, pastoral leases, local government areas. They can be used as reference as well. So clicking the disclaimers that you have intention to enter into the management plan and use best endeavours to reach agreement with the interested Aboriginal party. So as I mentioned before, the consultations and investigations to develop the management plan would have already occurred. The relevant people that would have been consulted would be the LARCs. If there's not a LARCs, it would be the native title party or relevant ILUA group and knowledge holders. And if none of those exist, it would be the native title representative body. So providing notice is different to the consultation and investigations, where this is about the parties to the plan, and the party to the plan will be the LARCs or the native title party, and if no native title party, the native title representative body. So in most cases, it's going to be one party, unless the area of the management plan crosses the boundary of multiple. So the details of the native title, the Aboriginal party would be entered into this area here. So in terms of the system, this is not an automatic notification to the Aboriginal party. This is about entering the details, the contact details you have information for, and when it comes into the DPLH, we can, if the Aboriginal party is registered in the system, then we can populate that into the notice, but it needs to be done internally within the department. So the proponent also has the use of a timer here, and as I said before, this is about providing notice is about that time where the parties come to agreement or negotiate the terms of the plan. And the prescribed time period for that is 5 days plus 140 days. So this timer is for the submitter or the applicant or the proponent, and it's a tool for them to keep track of when that notice was provided. The notice is sent outside the system. The notice isn't provided in the system. The system is this, I suppose, what you're doing, what the applicant will be doing at the moment is recording that the notice has been provided to the Aboriginal party and recording that in the system. But the actual providing of the notice will occur outside the system. And that's part of coming to agreement to the terms of the plan. So the details that are populated are provided in a summary here before you submit as final. Once you've checked those details, then you'd submit it into the department. So as soon as you open the plan notice, it creates a unique case number, and that case number will follow this management plan notice and management plan application all the way through. So if there's any queries or references, this is the number that you'd reference with the department to find that again. good thing is about the system, you won't lose it because all the draft applications and submitted applications will be stored in this portal area here. And if you do need to correspond with a department, you can use the comment function. But as I said, it doesn't send out the notice to the Aboriginal party. That's done outside the system, and that's part of the coming to the agreement to the terms of the plan and developing the plan as well with the Aboriginal party. So that would have sent a message to the department about a query, and the department can respond through that message as well. So in summary, before you get to this stage, the first thing that would have happened is you realize you need to do a tier 3 activity, that moderate to high level disturbance, and it is going to harm ACH, so it is within ACH. Consultation and investigations have occurred to develop the plan. The notice is submitted outside of the system to the Aboriginal party. Then the notice is submitted internally to the system, and that starts that period to reach agreement on the terms of the plan, which is the 5 days plus 140 days. In situations where there is already agreement with the Aboriginal party, then that 140 days may be reduced. So when the notice comes into the department will acknowledge that notice and also add the relevant contacts into the plan, and it will push it back to the applicant, so it'll be back in the draft application stage. So that's moved it from the notice to the application stage. So you'd review what was provided in the notice, and this next part is filling in the management plan application. So review the area, be the same area. If you do need to change it, you can contact the department and organise to change that boundary. But it would need to be a boundary that's the same area or smaller. Obviously, it's the same, you wouldn't be resubmitting it, but if it's a smaller area, it can't be a large area. So questions about has negotiation occurred? Should probably skipping through this a bit too fast. Let's go a bit slower. So reviewing the area. Has the area of the management plan to be negotiated changed? No. This is adding the tiers. So these can be pre-populated. And providing details for the plan. At the start of the management plan application, there will be a read-only review of the information that was entered into with the notice. The applicant will click next. So at the start of the application, there'll be a question about whether the area of the plan has changed. As a result of that negotiation period, the area may have been reduced. If the area has increased, the process would need to start from the beginning again to ensure that those consultations and investigations have occurred over that area that wasn't included in the previous notice. Details of the tier that the activity relates to can be found here and be entered into the application. So these match the tiers that are listed in the management code. So you can do a search. At this point, the detailed description of the project would be described here, and any attachments that may support that description of the project, including detailed designs, shapefiles describing the project, site plans can be entered as attachments at the end of the process. Every management plan is going to be different, and there'll be differing levels of complexity of the activity, and that'll be reflected in the description. Questions about existing plans are entered at this point. So if there is an existing management plan in the area adjoining or close by that this project relates to, information about that would be entered here, and that may also be a historical or transitional Section 18 from an approval in before the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act 2021. If the project is a continuation of existing project that has an existing approval, then details of that approval can be entered here. The timeframes and the parties to the plan, so the start and the end date need to be established for when the activities are going to occur and for which this management plan applies to. And also re-entering those details of who the parties to the plan are. This next section is about describing the consultation occurred in the development of the management plan. So details of so each consultation event can be input into these pop-up boxes. So populating these pop-up boxes would create a consultation event, whether that's a survey or a meeting with the Aboriginal party. The consultations are going to, depending on the scale of the management plan and the area, those consultations are going to vary depending on the Aboriginal party and the area and the extent. So for a large project that's going to be maybe for a multi-decade project, those consultations are probably going to be more extensive than a smaller scale project, which may have sort of less consultation events. So consultation will occur with the relevant parties, whether it be knowledge holders or the native title party or the larks. And also providing a description of the outcome of those consultations. And then questions around the overall sort of consultation process to provide a summary. Also details about any related agreements that may be relevant. Under the Act, there's sections that talk about existing agreements that applicants may have with Aboriginal parties that may describe that heritage investigation process for considering an area of land and the Aboriginal cultural heritage within it. So those related agreements can be referred to and relied upon, which are discussed in the Act or described in the Act. And questions about the information that was provided to those consulted parties, and also any limitations that may have arisen during that process that are relevant to describe. The next stage is providing information about that negotiation period where the terms of the plan are discussed and reached. So any details about how that process occurred to reach that agreement to the plan would be included here. And as we mentioned before, that occurs in that notice period where the 5 days plus 140 days and providing the notice to the Aboriginal party occurs, and that negotiation that happens about coming to the agreement to the plan. The next stage is about the Aboriginal cultural heritage that's been identified during the investigations. So the questions about, has all known ACH within the plan area been identified? And what was the process used to identify and obtain an understanding of the characteristics of the ACH within the area and justify the methods used? So this is really about ensuring that the relevant investigations have occurred to ensure that Aboriginal cultural heritage has been identified within the area and that those characteristics are understood, and any limitations of the methods that were used to identify the Aboriginal cultural heritage. The next part is about adding the Aboriginal cultural heritage that exists on the directory into the management plan. So this will happen by doing a search using the boundary, and it will pick up all the Aboriginal cultural heritage that exists in the layers that intersect that boundary or within that boundary. You can also add ACH manually, doing a search of the directory. For each of the Aboriginal cultural heritage places that have been identified within the area, details of the risk of harm and the level of impact will be provided in these pop-up boxes. That'll detail the risk of harm, mitigation steps, managing impact during works, rehabilitation and remediation, whether it's partial or full impact, whether Aboriginal people need to maintain access to that place. So those details will be recorded here. And also an overall Aboriginal cultural heritage impact statement, which may include the cumulative impact on Aboriginal cultural heritage within the wider area. So this question is about whether what steps may be taken during the activities of the management plan as they occur if new information about Aboriginal cultural heritage becomes evident. How will that be managed? One example may be if the activity is going to occur in a coastal area and it's known that Aboriginal ancestral remains and burials exist in those dune areas. During the investigations, all the ACH may not have been identified, and it may have been realised that is a possibility that when the activity occurs, Aboriginal cultural heritage such as burials may become evident, and it's steps that will be taken if that did occur. The next section is about the informed consent and how agreement was sought and reached during that process of agreeing to the management plan. The questions here about the information that was provided to the relevant Aboriginal party, a summary of that information, and provide evidence that that consent is given voluntarily and without coercion, intimidation, or manipulation. During the development of the management plan, conditions may be formed, and this is where they will be entered into here if they are agreed to. So you'd click on the pop-up box and enter those details for each of the conditions. And they may also be reporting conditions. This is the area where you'd provide details of the executive summary for the plan. So the first one would be the purpose of the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Management Plan, a general description of the plan area, a statement about the Aboriginal cultural heritage in the proposed area and its importance to the Aboriginal parties, a summary of the proposed project and the activity to be undertaken, and a summary of the potential impacts of the Aboriginal cultural heritage and the key provisions for minimising or avoiding harm to ACH. This section is information that will be provided that will enable an evaluation of the fee assessment. Uh, the fee assessment is based on a range of factors, one of them being the global revenue of the organisation who's the applicant of the plan. Also, the plan duration is taken into consideration, and the type of organisation as well. So once these details are entered and accompany the application, an evaluation will happen internally within the department, and the department will be in contact with the applicant about the fee amount and the payment of that fee. So at the end of the application, there'll be the opportunity to provide the attachments that support the management plan. There is currently a limit of 50 megabytes for the file uploads, and multiple attachments can be uploaded in this space. So the last stage provides a overview of the management plan. So this enables a review of the information. It also would highlight areas that are mandatory that haven't been filled in. So you need to go back to fill those details. The benefit of the system is you can jump around to different sections and not fill them in and go back to other sections. So the disclaimer, and that's submitting the application. So you'd get a unique case number, and as I mentioned before, that case number would be created as soon as you open the management plan notice at the very beginning of the process. So it's a useful tool in tracking that unique identifier, especially when discussing with the department to track it. So at this point, the department would receive the application, and depending on whether the approval was agreement to the plan was negotiated between the parties, or if there was no agreement reached, that would determine the pathway of the assessment of the application. If there is agreement, the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Council would have 28 days to consider and make a decision on whether to approve or to refuse the agreed plan. If there is no agreement between the parties of the plan, it would be 90 days that the council would need to make a decision and provide advice to the minister. Also, with the consideration of the management plan, uh, there needs to be consideration of whether there's any Aboriginal cultural heritage of state significance. And if there is that consideration of state significance, there's a process to consider and to give a procedural fairness to that consideration. If that preliminary assessment is that there is state significance, and if it is determined there is a place of state significance within the management plan, then the minister needs to make a decision on whether to approve or not approve the plan. So it's be useful to reference the guidelines at this stage, because there's lots of useful information about consultation, investigation, prescribed timeframes. There's a management plan template, and I suppose right at the beginning of the process, the management code for the due diligence process. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope this has given an overview of the contents of the management plan application. We really welcome your feedback, and if you have any queries, we encourage you to contact the department. Thank you very much for listening to this webinar.